Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a simple, but honestly, a really powerful idea that kind of flips our whole thinking about success on its head. The critical importance of building in room for error.
Okay, so let's just dive in with a question. We spend so much of our time trying to make the perfect prediction, right? The perfect plan. But what if winning, especially when it comes to money, wasn't actually about being right all the time?
What if instead, it was about something way more durable? What if success was simply about surviving all the inevitable surprises and setbacks long enough for your good decisions to finally, eventually pay off?
To really get our heads around this, we're going to start in a pretty unexpected place, a professional blackjack table.
So what on earth can a card counter teach us about all this? Well, as it turns out, a whole lot. It all comes down to playing a game of odds.
Look, a card counter isn't a psychic. They're not a magician. They're just using statistics to get a slight edge over the house. They know that over the long run, the odds are tipped just a little bit in their favor. But they're also really humble about one crucial fact.
And that is they can never predict what the next card is going to be. They are playing a game of odds, not a game of certainties. And this is the key. One unlucky streak, just one bad run of cards, could completely wipe out their entire bankroll and knock them out of the game for good.
So, the most important part of their strategy isn't just counting cards, it's survival. They have to acknowledge uncertainty. They never bet everything they have on a single hand. I don't care how good the odds seem. And most importantly, they build a huge buffer, enough cash to withstand the inevitable swings of bad luck so they can stay at the table.
And that card counter's buffer? It's the perfect illustration of a foundational concept in finance, the margin of safety. It's this brilliant idea that can make forecasting almost unnecessary.
So what exactly is a margin of safety? It's a simple but really powerful idea. It's the gap, the cushion, between all the things that could happen in the world and the one specific thing you need to happen for your financial plan to work out. It's your wiggle room.
The legendary investor Benjamin Graham put it perfectly. He said, "The purpose of the margin of safety is to render the forecast unnecessary." Just think about that for a second. The goal isn't to get the future right. The goal is to build a plan that's resilient enough to survive a whole range of different futures. You don't need a crystal ball if you're prepared for the plot twists. You've essentially built failure into the plan.
And this leads to a really fascinating point. Having a margin of safety isn't just about playing defense. It's about why endurance is your greatest edge, and how, believe it or not, it's actually an offensive strategy.
You know, the common misconception is that having a margin of safety is just a conservative hedge, something for cautious people who are afraid of risk. But the reality is completely different. It's the very source of endurance that gives you a powerful long-term advantage over everyone else who is fragile.
So why is endurance such a weapon? Because the biggest gains in investing, and really in life, they don't happen every day. They're rare, and they often take a long time to compound. By having that room for error, you guarantee you can stick around through all the inevitable downturns long enough for those rare, low probability, but massively impactful events to finally fall in your favor. And the people who get wiped out, they miss all of that upside.
Okay, so this sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like? Let's try to put this into practice with some real-world lessons in survival.
And this isn't just for individuals. Bill Gates famously said he wanted Microsoft to always have enough cash in the bank to pay a full year of payroll, even if they made zero revenue. Now, that wasn't just being cautious. That was building an indestructible fortress that allowed Microsoft to outlast competitors and survive any economic storm.
And you have to remember, this isn't just about the numbers on a spreadsheet. Room for error is also deeply emotional. Your plan might technically be able to survive a 30% market drop, sure. But can you emotionally handle it without panicking and selling everything at the worst possible moment? That gap between technical endurance and emotional endurance, it's a critical and often overlooked margin of safety.
Here is a really simple way to apply this to your own life. When you're planning for retirement, instead of assuming you'll get the historical average stock market return, build in a margin of safety. Just assume your returns will be, say, a third lower. So what happens? Well, it forces you to save a bit more now. And if the future turns out better than you planned, well, you're just pleasantly surprised with more money than you expected.
But what about the risks you can't even see coming? The truly unpredictable stuff? Let's dive into our final section, preparing for the unthinkable and the strange lesson that German tanks can teach us about finance.
This is a wild but true story. During the Battle of Stalingrad, a German tank unit was advancing, but the plan was completely derailed by something no one could have possibly predicted. Field mice had nested inside the tanks for warmth, and they chewed through the insulation on the electrical wires, completely disabling these powerful war machines.
And this story just brilliantly illustrates the lesson. The most dangerous risks aren't the ones you plan for, like a market crash. They're the financial equivalent of the field mice, the things that are too crazy, too specific, too absurd to ever even cross your mind.
These unknown risks become catastrophic when you have what's called a single point of failure. This is when the success of your entire system, your career, your finances, depends entirely on one single thing working perfectly. If that one thing breaks, everything comes crashing down.
So what's the biggest single point of failure in personal finance? It's relying 100% on your next paycheck to fund all your spending with no savings cushion. That paycheck is the one piece of wiring holding the whole thing together. If it gets chewed up even temporarily, the entire system collapses.
So as we wrap up, it really all boils down to one final question you should ask about your own financial life. Is your plan built on the fragile assumption that everything will go right? Or is it built with enough room for error to survive a world where things will inevitably and unpredictably go wrong?